until her voice made the billionaire cry. You need to hear this. Because what happened inside that grand Manhattan ballroom on a cold Friday night in November was something nobody planned, nobody scripted, and nobody, not a single soul in that room of 500 wealthy, powerful, important people, saw coming. There was a little girl standing in the corner, 3 years old, wearing a wrinkled pink dress. Her shoes didn't even match. Her mother was the maid, hidden in the back hallway, scrubbing silverware while the chandeliers sparkled above. Nobody looked at that child. Nobody smiled at her. Nobody thought she mattered, until she sang. And when she did, the most powerful man in the room, a 34-year-old billionaire who had built an empire from nothing, crumbled. Right there, in front of everyone. This is that story. And I promise you, by the time it's over, something inside you is going to shift forever. Welcome back, everyone. If this is your first time here, I'm so glad you actually mean something. Stories that make you feel things you forgot you were capable of feeling. Before we dive in, I want to hear from you. Which country are you watching from today? I read every single one, and I love knowing who is out there with me tonight. What you are about to hear is one of the most emotional, heartwarming, and genuine. It involves a struggling young mother, a tiny little girl with an extraordinary secret, and a billionaire carrying a wound so deep that he had buried it beneath years of success and silence. This story has a twist. Real one. The kind that hits you in the chest when you least expect it. So settle in, take a breath, and let's begin. She had learned a long time ago that in rooms like this, people like her were meant to be invisible. Rosa Mendez was 26 years old, and she had the kind of quiet strength that only comes from carrying heavy things for a very long time without letting anyone see the weight. She had grown up in a small apartment in the Bronx, the daughter of immigrants who worked double shifts and still somehow found time to sing together in the kitchen on Sunday mornings. Music was the language of her family. Her mother hummed while she cooked. Her father whistled while he fixed things. And Rosa had a voice that her church choir director once called a gift from God himself. But life had a way of interrupting gifts. At 19 she met Miguel. Warm, funny, endlessly kind Miguel, who worked construction and brought her wildflowers from the bodega on the corner every Friday evening like clockwork. They got married quietly at the city hall with 2 friends and a justice of the peace. They were happy in the small, real way that truly happy people are. No glamour, no luxury, just love. Then came Lily. Their daughter arrived on a Tuesday morning in early spring, and Rosa always said that the moment she heard Lily cry for the first time, she understood every song ever written about love. Lily had Miguel's impossible smile and Rosa's dark eyes. And from the very beginning there was something about her that was difficult to describe. A stillness, presence, like she was always listening to something the rest of the world couldn't quite hear. Lily was 18 months old when Miguel fell from a scaffolding on a job site in Queens. He did not survive. Rosa did not have time to fall apart. She had a baby, a 1-bedroom apartment, and exactly $400 in a checking account. Her grief was real and enormous, and she packed it carefully into a box inside her chest and kept moving. She found the job with the Harrington household through a placement agency. The pay was decent. The work was hard. The family was polite in the detached, slightly uncomfortable way that very wealthy people sometimes are with the people who clean their homes. Mrs. Patricia Harrington, 61 years old and impeccably dressed at all hours, was not unkind. She simply did not see Rosa. Not really. Rosa was a function. Service. A part of the household machinery that kept things running smoothly. In 2 years, Patricia had never once asked Rosa about her life outside of work. And then there was Ethan Harrington, Patricia's son, 34 years old. The kind of man whose face appeared on the covers of business magazines next to words like visionary and unstoppable. He had built his technology company from a dorm room at MIT and sold it for $3 billion before his 28th birthday. He had since built 2 more companies and acquired 4 others. He was brilliant. He was relentless. And according to the household staff who whispered carefully among themselves, he was deeply, profoundly lonely. Rosa had seen him only a handful of times in 2 years. He moved through the estate like a ghost, quiet, focused, courteous in the brief, distracted way of someone whose mind is always 3 steps ahead of the room. He had never once spoken directly to Rosa beyond a polite nod in the hallway. Tonight was the annual Harrington Charity Gala. 2 years running, it had raised over $8 million for children's arts education programs across New York. This year's theme was music. The centerpiece event was a live choir audition. 12 pre-selected performers, all of them trained, all of them professional, all of them well-connected, would compete to headline the charity's national benefit concert. Rosa had been called in at 5 in the morning. Extra staff, full setup, all hands on deck. She had no babysitter. She had no options. She wrapped Lily in her warmest jacket, packed a small bag with crackers and a juice box and a worn stuffed rabbit named Mr. Ears, and whispered to her daughter that they needed to be extra good today. Extra quiet. Extra invisible. Lily looked up at her mother with those serious dark eyes and nodded like she fully understood the assignment. And for most of the day she did beautifully. She sat in the small break room off the back hallway, coloring in a notebook Rosa had brought, occasionally wandering to the doorway to peer out at the glittering preparations with wide, wondering eyes. She did not cry. She did not fuss. She ate her crackers neatly and clutched Mr. Ears and watched the world of wealth and shimmer from a careful, respectful distance. By 7 in the evening the ballroom was full. 500 guests in formal attire. The kind of crowd where every handshake was a transaction and every smile was a calculation. The choir audition was scheduled to begin at 8 sharp. Rosa was moving fast, collecting empty glasses from a side corridor, when she turned around and realized with a cold jolt of panic that the doorway behind her was empty. Lily was gone. Rosa's heart dropped straight through the marble floor. She set the tray down without thinking and moved quickly back toward the break room, then toward the hallway, then toward the main corridor, whispering her daughter's name as loudly as she dared while the orchestra tuned up 50 feet away. She checked behind the curtains. She checked the coat closet. She checked every doorway. And then she heard it. Small sound. Coming from behind the tall service door that led directly to the side of the ballroom stage. Rosa pushed the door open slowly. And froze. Lily was standing just inside the doorway, her little face turned toward the stage, her stuffed rabbit hanging forgotten from one hand. She was completely still. Her eyes were wide and full of something Rosa had never quite seen in them before. Wonder. Pure, total, breathless wonder. On the stage, one of the audition performers was doing a sound check, running through a few bars of a hymn. And Lily, 3-year-old Lily in her wrinkled pink dress with her mismatched shoes, was listening like the music was speaking directly to her soul. Rosa moved quickly to scoop her up and get back to the shadows before anyone noticed. But she was 3 seconds too late. Because at that exact moment, Ethan Harrington walked through the door on the other side of the corridor. And he stopped. He looked at the little girl standing in the doorway, bathed in the warm gold light spilling from the stage. And for just one moment, something crossed his face that Rosa had never seen there before. Something that looked almost like recognition. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever looked at a complete stranger and felt like somehow, somewhere you already knew what happens next? Started exactly like that. What Rosa didn't know was that Ethan Harrington hadn't set foot inside that ballroom willingly in over 20 years. He stood in the corridor doorway for just a moment, looking at Lily the way a person looks at something that doesn't quite fit the world they've built around themselves. Then his expression closed again, professional and composed, and he nodded briefly at Rosa and continued down the corridor without a word. Rosa exhaled. She gathered Lily into her arms, whispered a firm but gentle, "We have to stay in the back, baby girl," and carried her back toward the break room. But Lily twisted in her arms and looked back over Rosa's shoulder toward the stage door the whole way there, like she was being pulled by something invisible. Rosa settled her daughter back in the break room with fresh crackers and a renewed plea for stillness, and went back to work. The evening moved fast after that. Trays to carry, glasses to collect. Instructions from the catering manager barked in urgent half-sentences. Rosa was good at this. The invisible work. The keeping everything running work. She moved through it with practiced efficiency and kept her worry about Lily tucked neatly behind her focus. At 8 o'clock sharp the ballroom lights dimmed and the choir audition began. Even from the service corridor Rosa could hear it clearly. The acoustics in the Harrington Ballroom were extraordinary. Each performer's voice filled the entire space with ease. The first three were technically flawless. Trained voices, controlled vibrato, perfect pitch. The crowd responded warmly. Polite applause. A few genuine appreciative murmurs. Rosa caught small glimpses of the stage through the service door when she passed. Ethan Harrington was seated in the front row, slightly apart from the rest of the table. His posture correct and his face unreadable. His mother Patricia sat beside him, leaning toward a woman in a red dress and whispering something with a gracious smile. The fourth performer took the stage. A young tenor with a powerful voice and an impressive resume. He launched into a gospel-influenced arrangement that drew real energy from the crowd. People leaned forward. A few swayed slightly. The applause when he finished was the loudest of the night so far. Rosa was passing the break room doorway with a loaded tray when she glanced in automatically to check on Lily. The small chair was empty. The crackers were untouched. Mr. Ears was sitting alone on the seat. Rosa's tray hit the side table with a loud rattle of crystal that made two nearby staff members jump. She set it down fast and moved. Her mind was doing that thing it did in moments of real fear, simultaneously calm and screaming, running through every possible location while keeping her face neutral so she didn't cause a scene. She checked the corridor. Me. She checked the coat closet again. Me. She moved fast toward the stage door, the one Lily had been drawn to earlier, the one that opened onto the side of the ballroom where the auditions were happening. She pushed it open carefully, just a crack. And her heart stopped completely. Because there, at the very edge of the stage, standing in a small pool of light that had no business touching her, was Lily. She had climbed the two side steps somehow. She was standing at the far left corner of the stage, partially visible to the audience, her stuffed rabbit now abandoned somewhere behind her. She was facing the microphone stand at center stage, which the fourth performer had just vacated. The room had not yet noticed her. The event host was at the side podium shuffling papers, preparing to introduce the fifth performer. Rosa had approximately 4 seconds before someone looked up. She pushed the door open further and moved toward the stage steps, her whole body tight with a specific terror of a mother who knows her child is about to cause an incident in a room full of 500 important people who have paid significant amounts of money to be here and are not going to appreciate an interruption from the maid's toddler. She was 2 steps from the stairs when Lily turned her head and saw her. And then Lily did something Rosa had not anticipated. She turned back toward the microphone, squared her tiny shoulders, and began to sing. No announcement, no introduction, no accompaniment. Just a 3-year-old girl in a wrinkled pink dress standing at the edge of a grand stage and opening her mouth. The first note came out clear and pure and absolutely devastating in its beauty. A few heads turned. And more. The event host looked up from his papers. The audience shifted. Someone near the back said, "What on earth?" in a half-whisper that carried further than intended. Rosa stood frozen at the bottom of the stage steps, one hand on the railing, unable to move. Because the song Lily was singing, Rosa knew it. She knew every single word, every note, every breath. It was the song Miguel used to sing to Lily every single night before bed. A song he had made up himself from pieces of old hymns and folk melodies his own mother had sung to him growing up in Guadalajara. A song that existed nowhere in the world except in their family. A song that Rosa had not heard since the night before Miguel went to work for the last time. She had not sung it since he died. She had barely been able to think it without falling apart. She did not know that Lily even remembered it. Lily had been 18 months old when Miguel passed. But here was her daughter, singing her father's song. Note perfect, every word clear as a bell. Rosa's hand gripped the railing so hard her knuckles went white. And across the ballroom, in the front row, Ethan Harrington slowly turned his head toward the stage. Do you think Rosa should have rushed up to stop Lily right then? Or do you think something bigger was supposed to happen in that moment? I don't think anyone in that room was ready for. The room did not just go quiet. It went the kind of silent that feels like the whole world has taken a breath and forgotten to let it out. 500 people. And not one of them made a sound. Lily sang. Her voice was not the voice of a trained child performer. It was not polished or produced or shaped by years of lessons. It was something far more rare and far more powerful than any of that. It was completely, entirely real. Raw and pure and aching with a feeling that a 3-year-old should not have been able to carry. And yet there it was, pouring out of her small body like it had been waiting a very long time to be released. She didn't look at the audience. She didn't look at anything in particular. Her eyes were slightly unfocused, turned inward, the way a person looks when they are not performing but simply living inside a piece of music. Miguel's song filled the ballroom from floor to ceiling. Rosa was still at the bottom of the stage steps, frozen. Tears were running down her face, and she did not even know when they had started. She could not move. She could not breathe. She could only stand there and listen to her daughter sing her husband's voice back into the world. The event host had set his papers down completely. The fifth performer, a professionally trained soprano waiting in the wings, was standing absolutely still with both hands pressed over her mouth. 3 rows back from the front, a man in a gray suit had his head bowed. His shoulders were shaking. And in the front row, Ethan Harrington was doing something that the people seated near him would later describe in varying states of disbelief. He was crying. Not the polite, glassy-eyed emotional response of someone moved by a performance. Not the controlled, dignified tear that a person allows in public while keeping their composure intact. He was crying the way people cry when something breaks open inside them that they have kept sealed for a very long time. His elbows were on his knees. His face was in his hands. His shoulders moved with it. Patricia Harrington turned to her son with an expression of pure shock and placed a hand on his arm. He did not look up. Lily finished the song. The last note hung in the air for a long, suspended moment, the way the last note of something truly beautiful always does, like the room itself doesn't want to let it go. And then the ballroom exploded. Standing ovation. Every single person on their feet. The applause was not the polished, appreciative clapping of a charity gala crowd. It was something rawer than that. Genuine. Shaken loose. Several people were wiping their eyes. The woman in the red dress that Patricia had been whispering to earlier was openly sobbing into a cocktail napkin. Rosa finally moved. She climbed the stage steps quickly and crossed to Lily and knelt down and gathered her daughter into her arms and held her so tightly that Lily made a small surprised sound. "Mama," Lily said calmly into Rosa's shoulder. "I singed Daddy's song." Rosa could not speak. She just held her. She became aware, slowly, that the applause had not stopped, that people were still standing, that the event host was at the microphone saying something she couldn't quite process, that a staff member she didn't recognize was approaching the stage with a look of professional uncertainty, unsure whether to escort them off or wait. And then she became aware of something else. Someone was standing at the bottom of the stage steps. She looked up. Ethan Harrington was standing there. His eyes were red. His composure, so perfectly maintained every other time she had glimpsed him, was completely gone. He looked younger without it. He looked like someone who had just been handed something he had given up on ever finding. He looked at Lily. And then he looked at Rosa. And he said very quietly, barely audible over the fading applause, "Where did she learn that song?" Rosa blinked. "My husband wrote it. He passed away 18 months ago. He used to sing it to her every night." Ethan was very still for a moment. "What was his name?" he asked. Rosa's brow furrowed. "Miguel. Miguel Mendez." Something moved across Ethan Harrington's face that Rosa could not name. His jaw tightened. He looked down for a moment and then back up, and when he met her eyes again there was something in his that she had not seen coming. "I knew that song," he said quietly. "I heard it once before. A long time ago." Rosa stared at him. "My mother used to clean houses," Ethan said. "When I was young. Before everything. We moved around a lot. And one summer when I was about 7, we stayed in a building in the Bronx for a few months. There was a family next door. The father used to sing at night sometimes. Through the walls. I used to fall asleep to it." He paused. "I never knew the words. I never knew the name. But I never forgot how it made me feel." His voice was rough. Safe. Like someone in the world was okay. Like things could be okay. Rosa's mouth was open slightly. Her mind was moving fast, connecting things, reaching back. A building in the Bronx. Family next door. A man who sang through walls. Her father. Her father had sung every night. Old hymns and folk songs and melodies he made up himself. Melodies he later taught to Miguel, who made them his own, who later sang them to Lily. The song had traveled generation to generation, through walls and years and grief, and had somehow found its way back. "I need to stop right here and ask you something. Have you ever experienced a moment where something that seemed like pure coincidence felt like it was actually meant? Like the universe arranged it specifically?" Because what Ethan did next, I don't think even he fully understood why he did it until much later. Nobody in that ballroom moved for what felt like a very long time. The staff member who had been approaching the stage had stopped completely. The event host was standing at his podium in silence. The applause had settled into a stunned, collective stillness, 500 people holding the moment carefully, the way you hold something fragile that you don't want to break. Ethan Harrington was still at the bottom of the stage steps, looking at Rosa and Lily. Rosa was kneeling on the stage, her daughter in her arms, trying to understand what was happening. Her mind was still processing everything. The song. Miguel's song. Ethan's face when he heard it. The Bronx. Her father's apartment. The thin walls and the music that leaked through them on summer nights when the windows were open. She had been 6 or 7 herself that summer. She barely remembered the neighbors. She remembered noise sometimes, a woman's voice, a child's laugh through the wall. She would not have known a young Ethan Harrington from any other child in that building. But the music had connected them. Across 25 years. Without either of them knowing. Ethan took one step up the stage stairs and stopped. Like he wasn't sure he had the right. "I'm sorry," he said. And he directed it at Rosa with a sincerity that she had not heard from anyone in this household in 2 years. "I'm sorry for what you've been through. Losing your husband. Doing this alone." He looked at Lily. "She's extraordinary." Rosa didn't know what to say. Her professional instincts were screaming at her that this was inappropriate, that she was the maid, that she was supposed to be invisible, that she should apologize for the interruption and take her daughter and disappear back into the service corridor. Every rule of her invisible world told her to shrink. But Lily, unaware of any of these rules, leaned out from Rosa's arms toward Ethan with her arms extended in the universal toddler gesture that means, simply, "Hold me." Ethan blinked. He looked at Rosa, almost asking permission. Rosa, operating on something deeper than logic, nodded. He stepped up onto the stage and took Lily from Rosa's arms. Lily settled against him with the complete trusting ease that small children sometimes extend to people that grown-ups are still deciding about. She looked up at his face, still a little tear-streaked, and patted his cheek with one small hand. "Don't be sad," she told him, with the matter-of-fact authority of a 3-year-old. The woman in the red dress in the audience made a sound that was half laugh and half sob. Ethan Harrington held that tiny girl and looked out at the ballroom, and his face was something that none of the people in that room had ever seen on him before. Unguarded. Real. "I owe a lot of people an apology," he said. His voice was quiet, but the acoustics carried it perfectly. "I've spent a long time building walls, making things, making money, telling myself that was enough." He paused. "I forgot where I came from. I forgot what it felt like to be the kid on the other side of the wall." The room was absolutely silent. "This little girl just reminded me." Patricia Harrington, in the front row, had both hands pressed flat against her chest. Her eyes were full. Ethan looked down at Lily, who was now examining one of his cufflinks with focused toddler concentration. "The charity we're raising money for tonight," he said, "provides arts education to kids who don't have access. Kids like I was. Kids like..." He glanced at Rosa. "Like this little girl." He took a breath. "I'm matching tonight's donations. Whatever we raise, I'll double it. Personally." The room erupted. Real applause, the kind that shakes a space. People were on their feet again. But Rosa barely heard it. Because in the commotion, Patricia Harrington had risen from her seat and walked to the stage steps. And she was looking at Rosa with an expression that Rosa had never seen directed at her from this woman. Not polite detachment. Not the pleasant, distant courtesy of an employer. Something that looked much more like seeing. "Rosa," Patricia said. And the way she said the name, careful and deliberate, made Rosa understand that she had known it all along. That maybe invisibility is sometimes a choice made by the person who's doing the not seeing. "I'd like to talk," Patricia said. "Not about work. Just talk. If that's all right." Rosa looked at this woman she had worked beside for 2 years and been invisible to, and she thought about Miguel, and about Lily singing his song into a room that changed because of it, and she nodded. "Okay," Rosa said softly. "I'd like that. Here is what I need to ask you right now. If you were Ethan, and you discovered that the music that carried you through the hardest years of your childhood had traveled all the way back to you through a little girl and her mother, what would you do next?" Because what Ethan did in the days after that night changed everything for Rosa and Lily in ways that none of us could have predicted. Some doors don't open the way you expect them to. Some of them just sing themselves open. In the weeks that followed the gala, Rosa kept waiting for things to go back to normal. For the moment to be quietly absorbed into the smooth surface of the Harrington household. A nice story, a warm memory. Then back to the invisible work and the service corridors. That is not what happened. The morning after the gala, Rosa arrived at the estate to find a small envelope on the kitchen counter with her name on it. Inside was a handwritten note from Ethan. Not typed. Not handled through an assistant. Handwritten, in the slightly irregular penmanship of someone who types everything and only picks up a pen for things that matter. It said, "I'd like to offer Lily proper voice training if you're open to it. The best teacher in the city. No obligation. No strings. I just think some gifts shouldn't be left in the dark." Rosa read it 3 times. Then she sat down at the kitchen table and cried. The good kind of crying. The kind that releases something that has been held too tight for too long. She said yes. The teacher Ethan arranged was a woman named Dr. Carmen Reyes, a vocal pedagogy professor at Juilliard who specialized in early childhood musical development. Dr. Reyes met Lily on a Wednesday morning, listened to her for less than 10 minutes, and called Ethan afterward with a single sentence. "This child is once in a generation." What followed was not a fairy tale in the Hollywood sense. Rosa still worked. She was still a maid, though her role at the Harrington estate shifted gradually. And Patricia, true to the conversation on the night of the gala, began treating her as a person rather than a function. Small things at first. Asking how her week had been. remembering Lily's name, noticing when Rosa looked tired and telling her to take a break without being asked. The walls did not come down all at once, but they came down. Ethan established a foundation. He had been thinking about it for years. He told Rosa one afternoon when she brought him coffee, and he actually looked up and started a real conversation rather than offering a distracted nod. The charity gala had always been his mother's initiative, something he funded and attended but felt separate from. Lily changed that. The foundation was named after Miguel, the Miguel Mendez Music Access Foundation. Ethan funded it personally, an initial endowment of $10 million, with a goal of bringing professional music education to underfunded communities across New York and eventually the entire country. Dr. Reyes came on as the founding director. The first class of students enrolled 6 months after the gala. Rosa became the foundation's community outreach coordinator. A real salary, benefits, work that used her mind and her heart and her history instead of just her hands. She cried when Ethan offered it. He looked mildly alarmed, and then smiled for the first time in what felt to Rosa like maybe the first real smile she had ever seen from him, the unguarded kind, and said, "Is that a yes?" "Yes," she said through her tears. "That's a very loud yes." Lily, at age 4, performed publicly for the first time at the foundation's inaugural fundraising concert. Dr. Reyes chose one simple piece for her. One song. Unaccompanied. Let the voice do the work. Lily chose the song herself. She sang Miguel's song. Rosa sat in the third row of that concert hall and watched her daughter stand on a stage that was built, in some way, because of everything her family had lived and lost and carried forward, and she felt something she had not been sure she would ever fully feel again after Miguel died. Whole. Not finished grieving. Not past the hard parts. Grief doesn't work like that, and anyone who has loved someone knows it. A whole. Like all the pieces of her life, the beautiful ones and the broken ones, were part of the same true thing. Ethan sat 2 seats to her left. He was not crying this time. He was smiling. Not the magazine cover smile that business journalists photographed. The real one. The one that made him look like the 7-year-old boy who fell asleep to music through a thin wall in the Bronx and never forgot how it made him feel. After the concert, a reporter from a national publication asked Ethan how he would describe what Lily's voice had done to him the night of the gala. He was quiet for a moment before he answered. "It reminded me," he said, "that the most important things in the world are not the things you build. They're the things that were already there. The things passed down through people who had nothing to give except love. That's the only currency that actually compounds over time." The journalist printed it as the closing line of the piece. "It is what this story taught me, and I hope it teaches you the same thing. We move through the world surrounded by invisible people. People we walk past. People we don't ask about. People whose lives, whose losses, whose gifts, whose loves are entirely unseen because we never thought to look. And sometimes because we never looked, we miss something that was meant for us. Something that could have changed everything." A billionaire with every resource in the world could not find what he was missing. It took a 3-year-old girl in a wrinkled pink dress and mismatched shoes, singing her dead father's song in a room she was never supposed to be in, to give it back to him. See people. All of them. Not just the ones who look like they belong in the room. Because sometimes the most important voice in the world is the one that nobody invited. If this story moved you even a little, if you felt something while you were listening, please give this video a like right now. Not for the algorithm, because stories like this one deserve to be heard by as many people. People believe that real human stories have the power to change us. They hit you the hardest. Was it Lily singing? Ethan breaking down? The moment Rosa found out about the connection? I want to know. I genuinely share this with someone today. One person. Someone who needs to be reminded that they are not invisible. That their story matters. That the music they carry inside them is worth something to this world.